Hi, guys. Today we're going to talk about a few concepts found within Western civilization: freedom and liberty. What is it, and is there a difference between both terms? Freedom is defined as a state of being free, a state where you're allowed to do what you please, essentially liberty. And for liberty, I looked it up in the Longman Guide to World Affairs. And under liberty, under personal, freedom from bondage and tyrannical government, and freedom of thought and direction of one's own life. Under national, freedom from foreign rule. In other words, independence or sovereignty. And that's what the basic definitions of those terms are. For my primary document, I'm actually using the Holy Bible. Within the Bible, there are plenty of verses discussing liberty, or at least mentioning liberty. And I looked for a few articles on maybe some clarifications, and I found one on BillyGraham.com. Four things the Bible says about freedom. Uh, the number one notion is that people have been looking for freedom uh, for thousands of years. And the example would be the Israelites themselves. In the book of Exodus, uh, they discuss the fact that the Israelites uh, were actually enslaved by the Egyptians, and Moses was chosen by God to free his people. And so he did manage to free the Israelites, and for 40 years they wandered around in the desert until they finally made it to the land that God promised them. And so they were free. Finally, they were free, and uh, they enjoyed the blessings of God. But of course, the Israelites, they fell away from God. They decided to worship different gods. They made idols that they worshiped to, and because of their sinfulness, they were punished. And so another nation came and conquered them and enslaved them. And for maybe several hundred years, they were enslaved until finally someone else came along that God chose, and he managed to free the Israelites again. And again, they enjoyed, the benefits of their God. And eventually, again, they would mess up and become enslaved again. It was a complete cycle. And eventually, what happens? Uh, the idea of freedom, or uh, God's answer to our loss of freedom, is Jesus Christ. And it was through the death of Jesus Christ that we are actually finally free from the world of sin that we live in. And this is the basic tenet of what you would find in the Bible. And there's so many verses that you could find in the Bible where they actually talk about liberty through Jesus Christ. And I also looked at another article where it's basically two concepts of freedom. And in this article, the author discussed uh, freedom under the concept of Judaism and American freedom. And the difference between Judaism and American freedom, although the article does say that, well, there's some people that actually think that, well, uh, the Israelites and Americans, they want basically the same thing. But there is a difference between what their concepts of freedom are. For in Judaism, the concept of freedom is actually dependency, and I'm assuming that the dependency is in the dependency through God, with God. But the way Americans see freedom is through individuals. Each individual has, their own liberty. They're free to do what they please as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. Whereas in Judaism, they don't see it that way. In Judaism, it's community based, And so a lot of what they believe is almost similar to what you would find maybe elsewhere in Asia and other non-Western groups, where it is the community that is the most important, not the individual. And so I hope that this helps you uh, as far as defining freedom and liberty and how different groups actually see liberty. Uh, well, thank you for listening.